the CDC, we still are asking all members of the public, city staff, as well as city council to wear face coverings, and we certainly appreciate your indulgence as we have worked to keep our most vulnerable safe during these proceedings. That being said, Clerk Bloke, please take the roll.
Councilmember Hussein.
Present.
Councilmember Wood.
Here.
Councilmember Spatafor. Present. Councilmember Spitzley. Councilmember Garza. Here. Councilmember Jackson. Present. Councilmember Brown.
Present.
You have 6 members of council. You have a quorum.
All right, we appreciate that. Please note that Councilwoman Spitzley has asked for an excused absence for tonight. That brings us to agenda item number 3. These are the meeting minutes from January 10th, 2022, and I'll turn the floor over to Vice President Wood.
Thank you, President Hussein. I would move the minutes as written of January 10th, 2022.
Fantastic. There's a motion on the floor. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That brings us to agenda item 4. This is public comment on agenda items. Unlike city council meetings, there is no sign up. So we engage in public comment on a first come, first served basis. You will have 3 minutes. We simply ask that you state your name for the record and that you speak to an agenda item. So with that being said, if there's any public comment, come on down. Seeing none. That takes us to discussion action item 5. This is a resolution. Do we have Mr. Paul Collins in attendance? Paul, can you come on down? We're going to actually have you come through the double doors right here. You're going to sit to our left, your right at this table. And if you get down there on the base of the microphone, if you want to push the button that actually says push, the green light should come on and we'll know you're live at that point. All right, so go ahead and speak into it. Let's make sure it's working.
Good evening, Paul Collins.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate you being here. So, colleagues, we are taking a look at a resolution of appointment for Mr. Paul Collins. This is for a position as an at-large member on the Lansing Entertainment Public Facilities Authority. If we should approve this appointment, the term would, would expire June 30th, 2024. Mr. Collins, what we're going to do is we're going to give you some time just to speak to the body, tell us a little bit about yourself, both personally, professionally, maybe talk a little bit about your interest in this particular authority, as well as anything that might uniquely qualify you for this position. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up for questions from the committee. Okay? Take it away, sir.
Sure. And thank you for entertaining my presence here tonight. I'm Paul Collins. I am an attorney with the law firm Miller Canfield. My office is located almost kitty corner to where we are here in the 100 East Michigan Avenue building. And I have been, and with our firm, I chair our firm's energy, environment, and regulatory practice group. And I have been an attorney with Miller Canfield for a little over 12 years now. And prior to that, I worked for the state of Michigan in Constitutional Hall down the road for the Department of Environmental Quality at the time. I was born and raised here in Lansing. I went to Michigan State University, also graduated from Eastern High School, and I've always felt like the facilities that the LEPFA manages are a huge part of the quality of life for the entire area. And for that reason, I would be honored to serve on the board. How I came before you this evening is, I think, probably more of a testament to the person whose seat I would be filling. A gentleman named Charles Jansen, who was also an attorney who I believe served on the board for quite some time. And the current board felt that having that type of legal mind, just participating in their decisions, obviously the city attorney does all the legal work, but just having the legal mind there to bounce things off of and to bring that perspective to the board's deliberations was very useful. Apparently Mr. Jansen contributed a lot over the years. And a close friend of mine, James Stages, is the current chair of the board, and he reached out to me and said, you know, we're looking for an attorney who might be interested. Would you be interested? And he told me, and I said I would, and he said, well, I encourage you to apply then, and I applied for the position. So.
Fantastic, thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councilman Garza.
Thanks, Council President, and thank you for being here, Mr. Collins. Could you just briefly tell me, like, what, if you do get selected and you're appointed to this board, what's your vision for LEPFA? What would you like to see in the course of your term on the board?
Well, I will be entering into it with a very open mind. I want to see the facilities that the agency manages thrive, and my goal will be to have them. I think they're doing quite well right now, and my goal will be to have them be in as good or better position throughout my tenure. I understand that if I am appointed, that I will meet with Mr. Keith, and he will give me sort of the rundown of the current situation. So I don't really have an agenda coming into it per se. I'm hoping to be to help manage the resources and allow them to continue to be quality community resources.
All right, Councilman Jackson and then Councilwoman Wood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Collins, for being here. So, I scanned over your professional resume, your legal resume. Looks very impressive.
Thank you.
But there's some things like that, relate to your work for or against maybe clean energy, maybe. Like routinely defend manufacturers, utilities, and municipalities in state and federal environmental agency enforcement cases, including allegations of violations of Clean Air, Clean Water Act, landfill, soil waste regulations, oil and gas production regulations, and nuisance and odor allegations. So I appreciate, you being an attorney and you represent your client and everything, and I'm still gonna vote, but I don't know, maybe you have done so many things, it's just like some of these, I don't know, it seems like they're outdated as far as, and it's no offense to you. I'm an attorney also, I represent people that I don't agree with, but it just seems like you're on the wrong side, that's all.
Well, I would say that I've been involved in bringing a tremendous amount of clean energy to the state, working for some of those folks that you have mentioned there on my resume. I have a
Point of
long...
order, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I
sorry.
appreciate Mr. Collins' attempt to answer the question, but I don't think his client docket is germane to his service on LEPFA, particularly in this area. And I would ask unless Mr. Collins particularly wants to answer the question, I don't think it's germane to this process and not necessary.
No.
Yeah, so if you want to speak generally to your position, that's fine, but I would agree, yes.
Yeah, and without taking any political stance on any of these issues, what I will say is I think there is, it's a complex area and folks need representation. I have expertise in the areas listed on my resume, and I'm proud of the work that I have done.
Anything else? All right, Vice President Wood.
Thank you, President Hussein. My question does also have to do with your legal ability. Miller Canfield is one of our outside counsels that is on our list of attorneys or firms that we use periodically. Would you be willing to recuse yourself of any vote at the authority if they were making decisions where your firm might be considered as someone that they would call in?
Absolutely. Not only would I be willing to do that, I would feel that I would have a duty to do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, just very quickly, and I don't know if this is a question for Mark or for Lisa. I'm curious in terms of the makeup of this board. It looks like we have potentially 3 kind of officio positions. That would be for the Director of ED&P, the Internal Auditor, as well as the Finance Director, and then it looks like the CVBD has a designee. The other 8 positions are at large, and I'm curious about a residential requirement. So is there any requirement that these folks have to live in the city of Lansing. I don't believe there is,
No.
but I just want to make sure.
You're correct, Council President Hussein. There's no requirement that the appointees to the LEPFA board reside in the city of Lansing.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Vice President Wood.
Thank you. With that, I would move for the appointment of Paul Collins to the Lansing Entertainment and Public Authority Board, and that according to the resolution that has been provided by the mayor's office, he has been vetted and meets all the qualifications as required by the city charter. So with that, I would move the resolution.
All right, there is a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And you are fortunate, because we are getting ready to start our council meeting in about 20 minutes, so if everything goes as planned. If you would like to stay, we can actually vote on this as a full body, and we can move forward with the swearing in of you tonight on the floor, or you can contact the city clerk's office as early as 8 a.m. tomorrow. There is actually a LEPFA board meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. I believe it's at the View over at Jackson Field. So if sworn in tonight, you could actually participate as a board member. All right?
All right,
All right, thanks so much. We appreciate your willingness.
thank you.
All right, that being said, we are now to action item C. This is an ordinance. This deals with a series of amendments to Chapter 890, Poverty Exemption Guidelines Reform. This pertains to property tax exemptions in whole or part for the principal residents of people who, or I should say, due to reasons of poverty, are unable to pay. We had our city assessor, Sharon Frischman in on December 13th to discuss this as we worked to set a public hearing. We actually had that public hearing on January 10th. When we had Sharon in, she discussed the fact that there was some legislation that had been passed, I believe late 2020, that has necessitated the amendments that you see before you tonight. We used to, as explained again by Sharon, we used to use a formula with regards to these exemptions, where we essentially looked at the refund a person would get from their state or from the state on their income taxes. Now, due to the changes that were earlier referenced at the state level, we'd be giving 100% exemption to all applicants if they are disabled or a senior on a fixed income, and this would apply essentially for as long as they qualify under these circumstances. If you don't fall into one of those categories, it was explained by Sharon that there's this kind of step-up situation where the exemption would be 100% the first year, 50% for the next few years, which are, I believe, years 2 through 4, and then that 5th year, and after that, it would be 25%. The only other change that was discussed is that we would now review the incomes of all owners as opposed to just the applicant. At our public hearing, Councilwoman Wood did ask whether or not the applicants would have to still apply on an annual basis, and Sharon confirmed that that would be the situation. In terms of our public hearing on January 10th, there were no questions, there were no comments. So with that being said, I would turn it over to Vice President Wood.
Thank you, President Hussein. At this point, I would move the adoption for moving forward for the adoption of the ordinance
There
for
is-
this evening.
Fantastic. There is a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion?
The only thing I will note is this is the last ordinance we're going to look at with all capital letters in it. Is that right, Lisa?
Yes.
Very good.
Thanks to you, Councilman Spatafor. We appreciate it. All right, so there is a motion on the floor. No other further discussion. So with that being said, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That brings us to our last item for tonight. Looks like we are on track, folks. This is a resolution that pertains to a grant from MISTA that covers emergency rental assistance. And this would be grant number 2 of this type. I did receive, come on down, did receive correspondence from Desiree Kirkland, who is our treasurer and our chief financial officer, and that would have been this past Tuesday. She informed me that essentially we had received a new coronavirus emergency rental assistance grant from MISTA, and the date she gave me was January 4th. This is, of course, separate from last year's grant on the same subject. MISTA is providing us with $10.3 million for the new grant series and promising additional funds if we can actually expend those dollars, I believe, by March 31st. The administration did acknowledge, and we appreciate this, did acknowledge our process, that they understood it's not necessarily ideal to have things referred, taken up in committee of the whole and council of the same night, but obviously with the importance of this assistance, they were asking that we expedite the process. I did talk to Vice President Wood in making the decision to let that happen, and we are fortunate enough to have Kim Coleman, Desiree, and her team on hand to explain the necessity of this and what we're looking at. With that being said, you have the floor.
Yes, good evening. It's no longer afternoon, huh? Good afternoon or evening, council members and President Hussein. We're pleased to be here this evening to ask your approval to accept the funds that we will be receiving from MISTA in the amount of 10.3 mil. I have with me one of our contract managers who has been managing our funds, both Sierra 1 and Sierra 2, who will talk to you in more detail. I don't know how you'd like to proceed, if you're asking or need her to present, or if you're hoping to just ask questions, but you'll let us know how you'd like to lead in.
We prefer to start a short presentation, and then we'll follow up with questions. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kim Dunbar. I am a contract manager with the Department of Human Relations and Community Services here in the city. I do serve as the fiduciary of these funds on behalf of the city and Ingham County. What we're presenting to you today is really Part 2 or Sierra 2 funds that are issued from the State Housing Department, MISTA, and they serve as the state administrative agency for these funds. These are actually federal funds that come to the state of Michigan, and we are awarded the funds on behalf of Ingham County. These funds are really used to keep Michiganders in their homes. The funds are for those who have fallen behind on their rent and they're needing assistance in order to continue. A lot of this happened during the pandemic, and that's why the name is COVID Emergency Rental Assistance. And tonight, we are specifically asking approval of the 10.3, it's $10,376,326 to be exact. Those funds were effective January 1st, and the program ends December 31st. However, the urgency is because we are mandated to spend these funds by March 31st. And we have a good track record with our Sierra 1 program, which in the last 3 months, we've averaged about $6.3 million in expenditures. So we are confident that we will spend the $10.3 million if it is approved. Thank you.
Okay, is that it?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Do we have any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Jackson, Brown, and then Vice President Wood.
Not so much a question, just a comment that I know that the Sarah is saving a lot of people and keeping them afloat, even if it's for the 3 months or however much they're approved of. So I wouldn't want to see that go away, especially when it sounds like we have to expand it more and spend it so that we can get the benefit. So thank you for that work.
Councilman Brown.
Could you further explain how, I heard you say that you're the fiduciary or HRCS is on behalf of Ingham County. So are we administering the services and funds through the Department of Human Relations and Community Services? Or do we have providers in place to ensure that the people are getting the services necessary?
We work specifically with community partners. For example, our 2 major partners are Advent House Ministries and Capital Area Housing Partnership. The funds, as I mentioned, are administered from MISTA to the city. The city serves as the fiduciary. But what happens is we have agreements. So those 2 agencies are like sub-recipients. So they actually work directly with the community. They provide their documentation to us every week, and every week we submit reimbursements to those community partners. And then we submit an official report to MISTA monthly as it relates to those monthly expenditures that go out weekly to our community partners.
So I noticed out of the 10 mills that there was about 10% allocated to administration and case management. Is that going to the community partners or to the HRCS department?
It goes to both. Most of it goes to our community partners because they're working directly with the public. But a little bit goes to HRCS, for example. I am the fiduciary, so part of my salary is paid out of the administrative piece.
Okay, thank you. And then also, I've had a few constituents who have had challenges accessing some of these services, and it's wonderful, the programs that are available. What controls do we have in place if we have provider agencies or community partners that are not delivering the level of care that we need? What is the responsibility of HRCS department?
Well, that's why we monitor weekly in terms of what our requirements are in terms of getting the documentation to our office. And we did have a Keep Your Home program, which was a marketing campaign that had telephone numbers, it had websites. We had people who actually went out to the public and met in communities where there's elderly people and people who are not easily accessible to the internet. So we have had a robust campaign to help reach the public. We do realize that not everybody has the same level of resources. So those are the types of things we've done to try to make sure we've reached out to our community partners, and which is partly why our program has been so successful. So we do try to monitor those who are in need.
That's fantastic that we're doing a lot of community outreach. Once we get the recipient who needs the service, and let's say that they are established with, I believe you said Capital Area Housing Partnership.
And Advent House
If they're not
Ministries.
getting the service or quality care that they need with that sub-provider, what is the escalation process or the protocol from there?
Yes, Councilmember Brown, I do know and recognize that they are in transition, and it's probably been more of a struggle over the last month than it ever has been that I'm aware of. We don't have any control over the agencies, but we continue to reach out to them and provide them as much support possible to help smooth out some of the hiccups that may be involved in the transition between Holy Cross and the new HARA. But it's a major undertaking, and with that comes training and getting everybody squared away.
Thank you so much for that, Director Coleman. So if, and I do understand we're having a transition, but to the individual who might be facing homelessness, I'm trying to understand how to direct constituents in the community. For example, if they're having challenges with either provider or maybe the Holy Cross, who is the individual or department responsible to ensure that people are accessing these funds before we approve additional funds and have a greater challenge maybe where more people are trying to access the service and maybe we're not, having the infrastructure in place to successfully distribute it and ensure that people are getting the service and care that they need?
I'm not particularly sure that they are having challenges necessarily with Sarah. There are other kinds of issues that they've been challenged with. But any issues that you would have with the agencies would probably need to go back to the agency directors.
Okay, and my final, thank you so much for that. So if the directors, if they're having challenges at the director point, what is the escalation point from there outside of that agency? Do they get with who?
They're independent nonprofits, and they have a board. So you would have to work with that nonprofit and their board, preferably their executive director.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Vice President Wood.
Thank you, President Hussein. Just going back a little bit on Holy Cross, have they received any money prior to this particular grant? And if so, have we been assured that it was spent appropriately?
Are you talking specifically, Sarah?
Pardon?
Are you talking about Sarah, this
Yes,
particular program?
I am.
Okay. Yes. And the process for Holy Cross has been the process for our other community partners. They were required to submit their paperwork to the city. And when they did that, we did review it. And everything that they presented to us was verified and reconciled, not only at the city level, but also at the state level. So
Okay.
there has not been any discrepancies as far as we could tell, and
Okay.
nothing has been noted to be out of order.
All right. Thank you. I think Councilmember Brown asked some of my other questions, so thank you very much.
Can I?
Sure, Councilman Brown.
Just real quick, thank you. To Carol's question, you said that there's, the city, they submit paperwork to us and they're the sub-provider. So I'm trying to understand where's the point of accountability. So if the board, if the people are having a challenge at the board level for the individual nonprofit as you've described, but we're the ones approving the paperwork and the administration, I think you articulated that we were the administrator and they were the sub. Where would the point of accountability be if they're not performing the duties, such as if that were the case with Holy Cross?
I'm trying to understand your question, so let me explain again that City of Lansing acts as the fiduciary, which means we receive paperwork from the community service agencies such as Holy Cross. What they have to present to us would be what we call a financial status report, which shows the top dollars by category, such as financial assistance and administration, of what they're requesting. In addition to that, they are required to submit their general ledger and supporting documentation such as timesheets or proof that they had other expenditures. And we are to reconcile that before we pay them. And in addition to HRCS receiving the paperwork, it then goes to our finance department, who serves as another layer of internal control. And I also mentioned monthly, we have to submit that documentation to the state, who also approves it before they reimburse the city. So there's a multiple step process in how we manage funds here at the city.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments or questions, Vice President Wood, what's your pleasure?
At this time, I would move the acceptance of the grant for MISHDA for the emergency rental assistance in the amount of $10,376,326. And there is no city match with that.
All right, we appreciate that. There's a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Before we adjourn, it is 6:58. We're still in committee of the whole. What we're going to do is adjourn in just a minute, and we're going to take, since it was a short meeting, we'll take 5 minutes to start our city council meeting. So with no other business before the body, we are adjourned at 6:58 p.m.